Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. I never thought I'd need a roommate again at 29. After the breakup with Mariah, I left our place in Portland and landed in Lexon, a quieter, smaller city about 2 hours south. It had this sleepy charm, like a town paused in time. The tree-lined streets, old brick buildings with faded 60s signage, and a kind of hush in the air. It felt like the right place to hit reset. The apartment I found was a 2-bedroom above a coffee shop on Main Street. A little creaky, sure, but clean. The landlord, Joe, was a retired firefighter who always had a cigarette dangling from his lips and barely said more than a few words. After I covered the first and last month's rent, my savings were shot. That's when the idea of a roommate started sounding less like a regression and more like a necessity. I threw up a quick ad in a local classifieds group on Facebook, looking for a clean, respectful roommate to split a 2BR apartment in Lexon. $600 motor, ideal for students or working professionals. Message if interested. A few hours later, I got a message. Hi, my name's Mara. I'm 26, just moved back to Oregon from Colorado. I'm studying wildlife biology and working part-time at a taxidermy studio. Yeah, I know, weird, haha. I'm quiet, clean, respectful, love old horror movies and hiking. Let me know if the room's still open. I clicked on her profile. Messy blonde hair like sun-dried straw, bright green eyes, a crooked but easy smile in most of her pics. In one, she was sandwiched between a guy and a girl, both throwing peace signs, captioned, "Love my crazy roommates." That gave me a weird little comfort. She didn't seem off, at least not on the surface. We did a video call that evening. She was soft-spoken, with this calm, grounded way about her. She talked about taxidermy with surprising enthusiasm, describing it like it was an art form. It didn't come off creepy, just niche. She laughed easily, even when I joked about horror movies being her personality type. By Saturday, she Venmo'd me her half of the deposit. Sunday morning, she showed up in a rattling U-Haul, with a friend named David helping her unload. David was tall and thin, wire-frame glasses, flat-brim cap, looked like the kind of guy who fixed guitars or skated curbs behind strip malls. They lugged up her things, Tupperware bins, a full mattress, a few worn cardboard boxes, and this massive gray cooler with bungee cords wrapped tight across the lid. She placed it gently in the corner of her room like it was valuable. At first, things were smooth. We settled into a rhythm quickly. She had classes twice a week at the local community college and worked part-time at a tiny taxidermy studio in a neighboring town. I was doing weekday construction and moonlighting weekends with my cousin's freelance carpentry gigs. Our schedules rarely overlapped, but when they did, it was relaxed. We'd crack open beers, rewatch dumb 90s cartoons, and one time stayed up arguing till 1 a.m. about the scariest Goosebumps episode. She never brought anyone over, never blasted music, and paid rent early every single time. Honestly, it felt like I hit the jackpot. Then, about 3 weeks in, I came home to find Mara and David muscling a chest freezer through the front door. I blinked. What's that for?" Mara, red-faced and out of breath, wiped sweat off her brow. "My boss gave me this old freezer from the shop. Figured I could keep some specimens here. It's a pain driving all the way out there every time I want to work on something." She looked up at me, hesitating. "That okay?" I didn't know what to say. The word specimens tripped something in my gut, but the look on her face, this mix of hope and guilt, softened whatever instinct I had to push back. She wasn't demanding, just asking. I shrugged. Yeah, I guess. Maybe just keep it in the pantry?" She gave me a grateful nod. Of course. That night, as I walked past the pantry, I caught the low, steady hum of the freezer already running. It gave off this faint vibration through the floorboards. I didn't open it. I told myself it was better not to know. Maybe I didn't really want the answer to what was inside. A few days later, I had the place to myself. It was a slow Sunday. I slept in, brewed some coffee, and scrolled through my phone while lying on the couch. Around noon, my stomach started grumbling, so I got up to make a sandwich. When I opened the fridge, a wave of warm air hit me. The inside light was dead. I frowned and reached up to press a few buttons on the microwave. Nothing. The clock was blank. Weird. Power outage? I muttered, rubbing my temples. I checked my phone. No text from the landlord, no alerts from the utility company. I flicked the kitchen light switch just to be sure. Dead. No power. I figured Mara would have mentioned something if she'd been home. I walked over to her bedroom door and knocked gently. Nothing. Probably at school. I grabbed my keys and headed for the breaker box downstairs, but as I passed the pantry, my heel slipped out from under me. I caught myself on the edge of the counter, my heart slamming into my throat. I looked down. A thin, dark trail of blood was seeping from the edge of the freezer, curling slowly across the tile in a sticky red stream. I froze. Every instinct told me to back away, but I just stood there staring. My chest tightened. It's animal blood. I tried to reason with myself. It's part of her work, that's all. But then I saw it. A heavy padlock had been added to the lid, thick, industrial-looking, and new. That hadn't been there before. I backed out of the kitchen and went straight to the hallway closet, yanked my old toolbox down, and dug through it with trembling fingers. Found the bolt cutters. My palms were sweating so bad I almost dropped them. Every part of me screamed not to open it, but my body moved like it already knew the truth, like it needed to confirm what my brain was refusing to accept. Snap. The padlock hit the floor with a clunk. I lifted the lid. The smell was instant and brutal, a choking blend of rotting meat, ammonia, and something musty, like old, wet carpet left out to mold in the sun. I stumbled back, gagged, and barely reached the trash can in time to vomit. Once I could breathe again, I grabbed the gloves from under the sink and returned to the freezer, heart thudding in my ears. I started pulling out bags, small ones at first. Feathers, claws, tiny curled bodies. Birds, maybe. One looked like a frozen fox, its mouth locked open in a permanent scream. Then I saw the contractor bag, thick black plastic, tied at the top with bright red zip ties. Blood was dripping steadily from the corner, making a tiny tapping sound on the edge of the freezer. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. Inside was a human head, bloated gray skin, eyes wide open, glazed over with that waxy, filmy look like someone left them in water too long. The lips were cracked, and a blackened tongue pushed out grotesquely between them. I dropped the bag and stumbled backward, hitting the tile hard. I crab-crawled away from the freezer like it might reach out and pull me in. My breath came in shallow gasps. My body was ice, numb. I didn't call from the apartment. I couldn't. I ran out, down the stairs, and sat in my car 2 blocks away, hands shaking so bad I could barely dial. My fingers kept pressing the wrong buttons. My ears were ringing like I was underwater. The cops showed up fast. They taped off the building, took statements. I was hauled down to the station and stuck in a gray interrogation room with nothing but a metal table and a chair too stiff to be comfortable. A blanket got tossed over my shoulders. I was still trembling. I told them everything. Mara, the ad, the freezer. The detective assigned to me was this middle-aged woman with sharp crow's feet, a tired but steady voice, and a notepad full of tiny, fast scribbles. "Did you notice anything strange before this?" she asked. I hesitated, then told her about this one time. I'd gotten up at night to make a sandwich and stubbed my toe on the kitchen chair. I cursed under my breath, and when I looked up, Mara was just there, standing in the doorway, half hidden in the dark. She didn't say anything, just stared at me, eyes fixed, face blank. I'd thought it was just weird timing. But now it clicked. She didn't come out because she heard me. She came out because she thought I'd opened the freezer. My stomach turned. The room felt like it tilted. I was sweating, even though the air conditioner was on full blast. That was 2 days ago. Today the detective came back, this time holding something in a plastic evidence sleeve. She placed it silently on the table in front of me. It was a printed photo, one I'd never seen before. Taken in our apartment. Mara stood in the foreground, smiling wide like she was in the middle of a happy memory. But behind her, in the chair by the window, was the head from the freezer. Same dead, waxy skin, same blank staring eyes. And on the wall behind them, written in what looked like dried blood, were the words, "Love my roommates." I never pictured myself ending up in a place like Willrest Apartments. It was a run-down 2-bedroom walk-up on Denver's east side, the kind of place where the hallways always smelled vaguely of mildew and the paint peeled around the door frames. But it was all I could afford after finally moving out of my parents' place. Balancing night classes at community college and pulling graveyard shifts at a warehouse didn't leave room for much luxury. I moved in with Tyler, a guy I'd known since high school. We weren't close, just two familiar faces who shared a few classes and played on the same soccer team. But he needed a roommate. I needed cheap rent. And he seemed like the quiet, keep-to-himself type. That sounded perfect to me, and at first it was. Tyler was polite, kept to his room, and always paid his half on time. He didn't throw parties, didn't bring over friends, barely made a sound. Most nights he was holed up in his room gaming or watching old horror movies with his headphones on. Every now and then we'd have a couple beers on the weekend, watch a game. But mostly we stayed in our own lanes. It was easy. Maybe too easy. Looking back now, there were things I should have paid more attention to, like how his door was always locked. Not just when he was out, when he was home too. Or how I never once saw him bring in groceries, not even a single plastic bag. Yet he always seemed to be in the kitchen around midnight, clinking dishes and shuffling around like he was cooking something. I figured he was living off delivery or nuking frozen food. No big deal. But then came the night that changed everything. I'd just finished a brutal double shift, 8 hours loading trucks, 2 more cleaning up a broken pallet spill. It was around 9:15 p.m. when I finally climbed the creaky steps to our apartment, bone-tired, sweat-soaked, and starving. The moment I opened the door, a wave of something foul hit me like a punch to the face. I stopped dead in the doorway, gagging. "What the hell?" I muttered, one hand still on the knob. It wasn't just a bad smell, it was suffocating. Thick, wet. It clung to my nostrils like grease. The living room was dark, quiet, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. I stepped inside slowly, blinking against the darkness, breathing shallow through my mouth. The air felt wrong, like something had gone sour in the walls. It was the smell of rot. Old garbage, meat left too long in the sun, maybe even worse. "Jesus Christ," I whispered, fumbling for the lights. Fluorescence flickered to life with a buzz. I stood there in the middle of the room, trying to trace the source. My eyes drifted toward Tyler's door. It was shut tight, same as always. I walked over and knocked gently. "Tyler, you in there?" I called, trying to keep my voice calm. "Dude, what is that smell?" No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. "Hey man, you okay?" Still nothing. I stared at the door, frowning. Tyler was usually home by now, and even when he had his headphones on, he'd at least grunt or yell back. I pressed my ear to the door, listening. Nothing. Just silence. Maybe he was asleep. Maybe he wasn't home. But that smell, it was strongest near his room. It was leaking out from the edges like smoke from under a closed oven. I hesitated. I'm not the type to barge into someone's space, and Tyler didn't strike me as the kind of guy who'd appreciate it either. So I forced myself to step back, shaking my head. "Whatever," I mumbled. I walked to the kitchen, grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge, and collapsed onto the couch. I scrolled aimlessly through my phone, trying to distract myself, but the smell just kept pressing in on me, thick and oppressive like a wet blanket thrown over my face. Half an hour passed, then an hour. The stench only got worse. I opened windows, sprayed half a can of Febreze, even lit a candle Tyler's mom had given us last Christmas. None of it helped. The smell wasn't just in the apartment, it was the apartment. I finally texted him. "Hey man, you home? Did something spill? Smells like something died in here." No reply. I called, straight to voicemail, tried again. Same result. That was weird. Tyler was always on his phone, even at 2 a.m. I remembered once mentioning the Wi-Fi was acting up, and he texted me back within seconds with 3 signal booster suggestions. I stared at the screen, my chest tightening. Anxiety crawled up my spine like ice water. Something was wrong. By midnight, I couldn't take it anymore. My eyes were burning. My stomach turned every time I inhaled. It felt like whatever was causing that smell was rotting through the walls and into my brain. I stood outside his door again, one hand resting against the frame, the other curled in a fist. "Tyler," I said, louder now, my voice echoing slightly in the quiet apartment. "I'm serious, man. If you're in there, you need to say something. I'm opening the door." Nothing. My throat went dry. My hands shook. Screw it. I stormed into the bathroom and yanked open the top drawer. Buried under the hair trimmers and expired cold meds was the spare bobby pin we always kept for accidental lockouts. Tyler had locked himself out of his room twice in the first month. We joked we should keep a rescue kit ready. Well, time to use it. I returned to his door and crouched down, heart hammering in my chest. The lock was cheap. We'd both picked it open before, but tonight my hands wouldn't cooperate. They were slick with sweat. The pin kept slipping between my fingers. Come on. Come on," I muttered under my breath. I felt the pin catch, twisted it, slipped again, tried again. Click. I pushed the door open and instantly doubled over, choking on the stench that surged out like a living thing. It was no longer just a smell. It was a wall of rot and filth that hit me so hard I staggered back, coughing, eyes watering. It felt thick in my throat, oily on my skin, as if decay itself was clinging to me. I swallowed hard and forced myself forward into the dark room. The only light came from Tyler's computer screen, still on, still logged in, casting a cold blue glow across the floor. His chair sat pushed slightly back like he'd just gotten up. I reached out with a shaking hand and flipped on the overhead light. I was not ready. The closet door caught my eye first. It was shut. But the smell, it radiated from there like heat off a grill. I could see it, almost. Wisps of invisible horror curling out from the thin gap beneath the door, seeping into the carpet. I moved toward it slowly, my heart hammering in my chest so loud I could hear it in my ears. My fingers hovered over the knob, trembling. "Please just be trash," I whispered. "Just be something stupid." I turned the knob. The moment it cracked open, the reality hit me like a gut punch. I staggered back as the door swung wider and the smell billowed out full force. Inside, on the closet floor, was a bloated black trash bag. It was leaking something dark and syrupy that had soaked into the cheap carpet, staining it with a deep maroon ring. The bag twitched slightly, or maybe it was just my vision swimming. Then I saw it. Poking through a torn seam in the plastic was a paw. A dog's paw. Matted fur clung to gray, swollen skin. The claws were curled unnaturally, stiff from death. The limb looked chewed at the joint, like it had been snapped off or crushed. I stumbled backward, hit the edge of Tyler's desk and tripped over his chair. My knees gave out and I hit the floor hard, panic flooding every nerve. My stomach turned. I scrambled to my feet and sprinted to the kitchen, barely making it to the sink before I vomited. What the hell? What the hell? What the fuck is this? I gasped, wiping my mouth with a trembling hand. I staggered back to the living room, pacing in frantic circles. My hands pulled at my hair, my pulse wouldn't slow. My whole body buzzed with shock. I couldn't think, couldn't breathe right. There was a dead dog in our apartment, in our closet, and Tyler had to have put it there. I didn't care about loyalty. I didn't care if it made me look crazy or like a snitch or whatever. I grabbed my phone with slippery, shaking fingers and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? My name is, Josh. I just found something in my roommate's closet. It smells like death and there's a bag. And inside it's a dog. A dead dog. I think it's decomposing. I think he did something. Something bad. My voice cracked. I must have sounded completely unhinged, stammering and rambling. But they didn't hang up. The dispatcher stayed on the line, kept me talking, and told me officers were on the way. The cops showed up within minutes. They told me to wait outside. So I did. I sat down on the curb in front of our building, hands locked around my knees, rocking slightly. My hoodie stuck to my back with cold sweat, but I didn't feel the freezing air. I just stared at the ground, trying not to pass out. The officers came back out, and one look at their faces told me everything I needed to know. It was worse than I'd thought. They said it was a pit bull, beaten to death, blunt force trauma. They didn't sugarcoat it. The injuries were extensive, and the level of decomposition suggested it had been in the closet for at least 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I'd been living next to that. I couldn't even speak. I just sat there, mouth open, throat dry, rocking back and forth like a child who'd just woken up from a nightmare and didn't know where they were. One of the officers crouched beside me. "Do you know where your roommate is?" "I haven't seen him all day," I whispered. "He hasn't answered his phone. He's not here." They took my statement. I gave them everything I knew: Tyler's full name, his class schedule, his social handles. They put out a warrant that night. But Tyler never came back. Not that night. Not the next day. Not ever. I didn't wait around to see what would happen next. I packed whatever I could fit in my car the next morning: clothes, laptop, toiletries. I left the rest behind: TV, dishes, couch, even my bed. None of it was worth staying another second in that place. I broke the lease, didn't care. Ate the fee, just wanted out. For weeks afterward, rumors floated around online. People said Tyler had disappeared. Some swore they saw him in another city. Others thought he was dead too, maybe hiding out in the mountains, maybe buried in someone else's basement. I didn't care. I blocked him on everything, deleted his number. I wanted nothing more to do with him. The kid I remembered from high school, the guy who shared snacks with me in algebra, who stayed up late playing FIFA in our crappy living room, who kept to himself and minded his business. That version of Tyler, he didn't exist. Maybe he never had. And sometimes late at night, I still catch myself wondering, what if I hadn't opened the door? What if I'd come home earlier? What if Tyler had come back while I was there? Would I have ended up in that closet too? The thought never leaves me. It just sits there like a bruise on my mind I can't stop pressing. Because the truth is, you never really know someone. Not your classmates, not your roommates, not even the people you think you grew up with. And sometimes, the only warning you'll ever get is the smell. I just graduated high school, a moment that was supposed to feel like freedom, like the beginning of something big. But it didn't. Instead, I felt unsettled. While others celebrated and made plans, gap years, college dorms, trips with friends, I had something else in mind. My plan was simple: get out on my own. No roommates, no parents, no rules, just me. Independence. I'd been hustling for that dream since I was 16, working part-time at a grocery store, then weekends at a gas station. I saved obsessively, skipped out on anything I didn't absolutely need. By summer 2018, I'd finally stacked up about 10 grand. Not a fortune, but enough for a cheap apartment and a shot at solitude. The place I found was modest, an aging one-bedroom unit on the first floor of a brick building just down the street from my old high school. It smelled faintly of dust and old carpet, but I didn't care. It was mine. A few parks were nearby. The grocery store was walking distance. and the bus stop was right around the corner. Best of all, a couple of my old friends, Aaron and Rob, lived upstairs. Familiar faces close by, but not too close. The first week felt like a dream. I had no one telling me what to do, no shared walls with family, no curfews. I ordered takeout, binged horror movies till 2 a.m., and lounged around in my boxers without worrying about someone knocking. It was quiet, peaceful, like the life I'd imagined for years. But that calm didn't last. Aaron and Rob started dropping by more often. At first, it was just an hour here or there, hanging out, playing video games, grabbing a beer. Normal stuff. But it escalated quickly. Before I knew it, they were crashing on my couch, staying through the night, then the next night. I'd wake up and find them still there, using my shower, eating my food. They weren't just visiting anymore, they were living there. I tried to be chill about it. I'd always liked those guys. We had history. But I'm naturally introverted, and I'd been craving space, quiet, time to figure out who I was without anyone around. One night after they'd been hanging around all day, I finally spoke up. "Hey guys," I said, keeping it casual. "I kinda need some time to myself tonight. It's been a long day." They blinked at me, confused. Aaron chuckled. "What, you kicking us out?" I gave a small shrug. "Not like that. I just need a little room to breathe, you know?" I was trying to be polite, but firm. They left eventually, and I remember shutting the door behind them and feeling this weird tension in my chest, like I'd just broken something I couldn't fix. The next morning, Aaron knocked. He stood there with this half smile scratching the back of his neck. "Listen, man, we got evicted. Our landlord's a dick. We don't have anywhere else to crash right now." I didn't respond right away. I could already feel where this was headed. "Just for a couple weeks," he added quickly. "We'll figure something out, swear." I hesitated. Every instinct I had told me this was a bad idea, but the guilt got the better of me. I didn't want to be the guy who left his friends stranded. "All right," I said. 2 weeks. That's it." Those 2 weeks bled into a month, then 2. And somewhere in that slow spiral, my apartment stopped feeling like mine. The place became a revolving door of random faces. Aaron and Rob brought people over constantly. Sometimes it was just a few guys, but more often it turned into full-blown parties. Loud music, beer bottles everywhere, weed smoke clinging to the curtains. Strangers passed out on the floor. I was working early shifts and coming home to chaos. I couldn't sleep, couldn't think. I started feeling like a guest in my own home. I tried to bring it up again, tried to be diplomatic. "Hey, I really need to cut back on the parties. I'm not sleeping. I've got work in the morning." Yeah, Rob would say, brushing it off. "We're working on a place." But nothing ever changed. Deep down, I knew they were using me. I just didn't know how to make it stop. Then came the night I lost it. It had been a brutal day at work. My feet ached. I hadn't eaten since noon. I just wanted to sit in silence and maybe get 6 hours of uninterrupted sleep. But when I walked in, the apartment was packed. Music thumped through the walls. A couple was making out on my couch. Someone I didn't even know was rifling through my fridge. I stood frozen for a moment, staring at the mess. Something cracked inside me. "No," I muttered, then louder. "No. This stops now." I stormed into the living room, voice raised above the music. "Everybody out. Right now. I don't care if you're friends or strangers. I want everyone gone." There was a moment of stunned silence. Aaron looked up from where he was playing cards at the kitchen table. "Dude, chill." "I'm not chilling. I'm done. This is my apartment, my space. I've been patient, but this isn't working. I can't live like this." Rob stood up, trying to calm me down. All right. We get it." "No," I said firmly. "You don't. I want my life back. Tonight." I watched them gather their stuff in awkward silence. People filtered out one by one, mumbling apologies or giving me side eyes. When the door finally closed behind the last person, I leaned against it and let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. For the first time in weeks, the apartment was quiet, and I finally felt like I could breathe. "I'm not asking," I said, my voice low and cold, the kind of tone that leaves no room for argument. It took nearly 20 minutes to clear everyone out. Aaron and Rob didn't make it easy. They moved slowly, dragging their feet like they were daring me to push them out physically. Their eyes were hard, not angry exactly, just stubborn in a way that made my skin crawl. But eventually they left, and I shut the door behind them with shaking hands. I felt drained, completely and utterly wiped out. My muscles ached, my mind was scattered, and I collapsed into bed, hoping I'd finally get a few hours of peace. Maybe, just maybe, the worst of it was over. But the next morning I woke up with a pounding headache and a thick, nauseating dread in my gut. My body felt heavy, like I hadn't slept at all. The apartment was too quiet, off somehow. I rubbed my temples and stumbled out of bed, yawning as I made my way toward the kitchen. I wasn't expecting anything, I just wanted coffee. But the moment I turned the corner, I froze. There they were, Aaron and Rob, sitting on my couch like nothing had happened. "Hey man, what's up?" Aaron said casually, like we hadn't just had a massive blowout the night before. My stomach flipped. "What the hell are you doing here?" I snapped. Rob looked up from his phone and shrugged. "Relax. We're not going anywhere, bro. Just chill." I stood there, stunned. My breath caught in my throat. I felt a wave of heat rise in my chest, confusion, anger, disbelief all crashing together. How the hell had they gotten in? Then I remembered. The spare key. I'd given it to them when they first moved in upstairs, back when I thought they were still my friends. I never got it back. "You've got to be kidding me," I muttered, backing away as I fished my phone from my pocket. My hands were shaking. I wasn't playing nice anymore. I dialed 911. When the dispatcher picked up, I gave them my address and told them there were intruders in my apartment, people who refused to leave. I tried to keep my voice calm, but it cracked a little toward the end. Aaron and Rob heard me. Their eyes shifted, and without saying a word, they bolted out the front door. By the time the police showed up, they were gone. I gave my statement, but it didn't feel like closure. If anything, I felt worse. They knew they'd crossed a line, but what scared me more was the thought that maybe they'd never really been who I thought they were. That maybe I'd never really known them at all. That night I couldn't relax. I pushed furniture up against the door, double-checked every window, and kept the lights on. My body wouldn't stop trembling. I didn't feel safe. Not in my own home, not in my own skin. Something had shifted. I could feel it. At around 10:30 p.m., just when I thought I might finally doze off, I heard the front doorknob rattle. Not just once, a slow, deliberate turning, like someone was testing it. I went completely still. My heart slammed against my ribs and my mouth went dry. I grabbed my phone again and called the police without thinking. I didn't even whisper. I didn't want to make a sound. I just pressed the phone to my ear and listened to the dispatcher on the other end while I stared at the door. Then came the knocking. "Bro, let us in," Aaron's voice called out, muffled through the door. "We're sorry, man. It's freezing out here. We won't mess up again. Just one more night. That's all we're asking." I didn't answer. I didn't move. Something in his voice was off. The words were right, but the tone, it didn't feel real. It felt rehearsed, hollow. I could hear it in the way he lingered on the word sorry, like it was something he thought he was supposed to say, not something he meant. "No," I whispered to myself. "Not again." Minutes later, flashing red and blue lights painted my walls. This time the police caught them. They were arrested right outside my door. The officer who spoke to me afterward looked visibly shaken. He told me they found several disturbing items in their backpacks: drugs, handcuffs, knives, and a roll of heavy bondage rope. One of them even had a loaded firearm tucked into the waistband of his jeans. I felt like the floor disappeared beneath me. What would have happened if I'd opened that door? If I'd believed them? I couldn't stop picturing it. Me asleep, unaware, vulnerable. I'd never felt so violated, Or so lucky. I filed for a restraining order the very next day and changed every lock in the apartment. I even bought a new deadbolt for the bedroom door. I stopped drinking altogether. The smell of alcohol made me sick now. It reminded me too much of that night, of everything I almost didn't survive. But even after the legal protections and the practical steps, something in me never really healed. I couldn't shake the memory of their eyes that last night, how they looked at me like I was nothing but an obstacle. These weren't the guys I'd grown up with. Not anymore. They were strangers, and dangerous ones. I moved a few months later, but the paranoia came with me. Every time someone knocks on my door after dark, my chest tightens. I peek through the peephole with my breath held. I keep my phone close, always. I dodged something terrible that night. I know that now. And it changed me. Forever. I thought moving in with a new roommate would be a clean slate. After the breakup, messy, raw, and final, I was left with nowhere to go and a pit in my chest that never really stopped aching. My lease was ending, and I couldn't stand the silence of that old apartment one more night. So when I saw the ad for a room in a vintage 2-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood, it felt like a lifeline. The place was charming in an old soul kind of way. The hardwood floors creaked under every step, but it didn't bother me. It gave the place personality. There was a narrow little balcony with a view of the city skyline, and every corner of the apartment seemed to hum with history. The wallpaper was faded, curling a bit at the edges, but it caught the late afternoon light in the most nostalgic way. The price was manageable, the neighborhood calm. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could exhale. Megan, my new roommate, was reserved. A little odd. We only talked briefly during my visit, but even then I felt something I couldn't name. She had these deep, hollow circles beneath her eyes, like sleep had been a stranger to her for weeks. And when she looked at you, it was with this strange intensity, too focused, like she was watching for something. Still, she was polite. Not warm, but not hostile either. And honestly, the apartment was too good to pass up just because someone seemed a little off. That first night, I was unpacking boxes, trying to settle in and make my room feel like mine. I had just started stacking some books on a shelf when I heard it, a faint scratching sound, light, slow. Nails? Maybe something being dragged. I stopped and tilted my head, trying to locate it. It was rhythmic, careful. I moved closer to the wall, pressed my ear against the cool plaster. Nothing. Then, there it was again, a deliberate scrape. I stepped back, goosebumps rising on my arms. Probably just the building, I told myself. Old places creak and shift all the time. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling of something watching. I forced myself to finish unpacking, blaming my unease on all the recent emotional chaos. The next morning, we were both in the kitchen. Megan sat sipping tea with both hands wrapped around her mug like she was trying to absorb the warmth into her bones. I stirred my coffee, trying to sound casual. "Hey, do you ever hear weird noises at night? Like scratching?" She looked up, her expression unreadable. "It's an old building," she said after a pause. Her voice was even, calm, but too slow, like she was choosing her words. "They make sounds." I nodded, pretending to accept it, though her answer didn't ease the tightness creeping up my spine. She stared back down into her tea, tracing her fingertip along the rim of the mug. Something about the way she moved, methodical, distant, set my nerves on edge. Over the next few days, the sounds didn't go away. They became part of the night, always faint, always deliberate. Then I started noticing other things. One night, as I was getting ready for bed, I spotted them, small holes in the wall. Tiny, barely visible unless you were looking for them. But there they were. One directly across from my bed, another near the bathroom door. Too precise to be random damage. I knelt down, staring at them. Air passed faintly through. It was like they were meant to be there, for something. I grabbed paper and tape, covering them. It made me feel safer even if I knew it was probably irrational. But the next morning, they were uncovered. The tape was gone, the paper too, and I could swear the holes looked slightly bigger, like something had been poking at them. My stomach turned. Someone, or something, had been inside my room. That morning, I found Megan in the kitchen again. My voice came out tight. "Did you go into my room last night? The paper I put up, it's gone." She glanced up from the counter, holding a knife over a piece of toast. Her face was blank. "Why would I go into your room?" she asked flatly. "Maybe you imagined putting it up." I stared at her, stunned. Her tone wasn't defensive, it was eerie, almost amused, like she knew something I didn't. My mind buzzed with questions I didn't want answers to. That night I barely slept. Every creak felt sharper, every shadow more alive. Around 2 a.m., it returned, the scratching. But this time, it was louder, urgent. It moved along the wall behind my bed, closer and closer, until it stopped right behind my headboard. My heart pounded. I couldn't move. I whispered into the dark, voice trembling. "Who are you? What do you want?" A soft giggle replied, faint, childlike. My skin went cold. I didn't sleep after that. The next morning, my closet door was ajar. I hadn't opened it. Several shirts and a pair of jeans were gone. I didn't remember wearing them recently. By midday, they were back, folded neatly on my bed. The fabric reeked. Damp soil, mixed with something sweet, but spoiled, like flowers left to rot in water. I gagged and dropped them. My mind raced. I didn't know what to do. I started avoiding the apartment. I'd stay out as late as possible, camping out in cafes, just scrolling aimlessly. Anything to avoid that place. One night I was at my usual spot, laptop open, just trying to feel normal. That's when it happened. The webcam light blinked on. Just for a second. I froze, reached to disable it. Before I could click, a message appeared on the screen. An anonymous message. "Why don't you want me to see you?" The message blinked on my laptop screen, and I froze. My heart lurched up into my throat. The air around me suddenly felt too thin, like I couldn't draw in enough oxygen. With trembling fingers, I typed, "Who is this?" No reply, just silence. I slammed the laptop shut, chest tight with dread. The sensation of being watched pressed down on me, crawling up the back of my neck like icy fingers. I gathered my things in a panic and rushed out of the cafe, nearly knocking over a chair in my haste. The streets were quiet as I hurried home, the distant sound of a siren wailing somewhere in the city only making me feel more alone. Once inside, I locked my bedroom door, dragging a chair underneath the knob just to be safe. I didn't feel safe, though, not even close. I collapsed into bed fully clothed, a kitchen knife clutched tight under my pillow, my mind racing. Sleep didn't come easily. Every sound made me flinch. Sometime in the dark stillness, I felt it. Something was off, a pressure in the air. My eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, until I saw her. Megan. She stood at the foot of my bed, silhouetted by the weak glow of streetlights filtering through the blinds. Her presence was quiet, unmoving, like a shadow that had grown too solid. "Megan." My voice cracked, barely audible. She didn't move for a long moment, just stared. "You were screaming," she said at last. Her voice was hushed, too calm, detached. "I didn't scream," I whispered. My pulse thudded against my ribcage. "Please, just leave." She tilted her head slightly. Then, wordless, she turned and walked out, her bare feet whispering against the floorboards. I listened to her steps fade down the hall, but I couldn't sleep after that. I just stared at the ceiling, paralyzed by something deeper than fear. Something I couldn't name. The next morning, I'd had enough. I started packing, shoving clothes into bags without folding, heart pounding in my ears. I needed to get out before nightfall. As I dug through a box of old clothes I hadn't touched in weeks, something small clattered to the floor. A flash drive. I didn't recognize it. My hands trembled as I plugged it into my laptop. Only one folder. For Claire. My throat tightened. I clicked it open. Dozens of video files, each labeled with a date. My fingers hovered over the most recent one before double-clicking. The footage was grainy, black and white. My bedroom. I watched myself sleeping, my body twitching in restless dreams. My mouth was slightly open, brows furrowed. The timestamp was last night. Then the camera panned slowly. My skin went cold. Megan was in the corner, just standing there, still as death. Her eyes shimmered in the infrared like an animal's in headlights, unblinking, watching me. I backed away from the laptop, bile rising in my throat. Shaking, I clicked another file. It was me in the bathroom, stripping off my shirt, vulnerable, oblivious. She had been there. My chest heaved. I wanted to scream, to run, to undo ever moving in. The last file at the bottom was titled simply, Tonight. I didn't want to open it, but I had to. It was a live feed. My bedroom. The view was tight from inside the wall, the same angle as the holes I'd taped up. The screen glitched. A new message flickered across the top. I'm coming. A loud thud came from the hallway. Then, footsteps. Slow, approaching. I reached for my phone. No signal. My breath hitched as the apartment lights flickered and died, plunging me into darkness. The doorknob rattled violently. Let me in. Her voice, distorted low, almost robotic, filtered through the crack. I just want to make sure you're okay. No, I whispered, backing away, knife in hand. My heart slammed in my chest like it wanted out. The door creaked open. I had locked it. Megan stood in the doorway. But it wasn't her. Not really. Her arms were too long, hanging past her thighs at unnatural angles. Her joints jutted wrong, like she'd been assembled from mismatched parts. Her face sagged with shadow, eyes sunken so deep I couldn't see the whites. Something inside her was rotting, twisting. You shouldn't have tried to leave, she whispered. Her voice cracked and churned like gravel in a blender. I screamed, lunging past her into the hallway. The scraping noise I'd heard from the walls before. It was back, louder, following me. I tore down the corridor, blood roaring in my ears. The front door wouldn't budge. I pulled at it, slammed my shoulder into it, but it was stuck like it had been welded shut. Behind me, her laughter spiraled through the apartment, shrill, frenzied. I grabbed a chair and smashed it into the living room window. Glass exploded. My hand sliced open on a jagged shard as I crawled through, adrenaline numbing the pain. I ran, didn't look back. Not until I saw the glow of a gas station ahead. The bright lights felt like a lifeline. I stumbled inside, bloodied and shaking. The attendant stared. Miss, are you all right? I couldn't form words at first. Just gasps, half-formed explanations. Finally, someone called the police. When the officers arrived, I told them everything. Megan, the cameras, the flash drive. They listened quietly. One officer frowned. Ma'am, that building's been abandoned for years. I blinked. No, I moved in last week. Megan is my roommate. They exchanged glances. One of them stepped forward. We'll check it out, but that apartment... The last listed tenant was a woman named Margaret. She died there in the 1980s. I didn't believe them. Couldn't. Until they drove me back. The building was a husk. Windows boarded, doors rotting, graffiti tagged across the brick. The air smelled like mildew and mold. Inside, everything was covered in a thick layer of dust. My belongings? Gone. No trace I had ever been there. The apartment was hollow, decayed, dead. Except for one thing. A vintage camcorder sat on a tripod, centered in the living room, pointed directly at the door. A note was taped to it. I peeled it off. It was in my handwriting. "Thank you for the performance." I stared at the camcorder, heart stuttering, breath shallow. Nothing made sense. The officers led me out, but I couldn't stop trembling. I didn't know what I'd lived with, and I still don't know if I ever really left. It started the day I moved to Oak Ridge, a quiet, tucked-away mountain town that looked like it had been frozen in time. I'd always been drawn to solitude, but after the brutal unraveling of my marriage, I wasn't just looking for peace. I was running from everything familiar. Oak Ridge felt safe, small, calm, predictable. With legal bills and the cost of starting over scraping the bottom of my savings, I didn't have much choice but to split a modest 2-bedroom apartment with someone. Sarah came recommended through a mutual acquaintance, someone I trusted enough to take the leap. She was kind at first, really kind, always smiling, always listening, always offering little favors like brewing tea before bed or folding my laundry when I forgot it in the dryer. After the chaos of the last year, her warm presence felt like a gift. She worked as a nurse, stable, responsible, used to handling crises. It was comforting. We were both in our late 30s, both carrying invisible scars, and for a while it felt like we'd found a gentle kind of companionship in our shared quiet. The first few months were almost idyllic. We cooked together, traded stories over glasses of cheap wine, and watched old movies on lazy Sundays. I started to think I might actually be okay, but slowly, things began to shift. Not suddenly, more like the barely noticeable change in air before a storm. A feeling I couldn't quite shake, nothing I could name, just off. It began with fatigue, nothing major, just a dragging tiredness I chalked up to work stress. Then it deepened. My limbs felt heavy all the time. I had trouble focusing. I started waking up with night sweats, and no matter how much I slept, I never felt rested. The exhaustion sank into my bones, like my body was turning against me. I brushed it off for weeks, blaming my post-divorce anxiety, my poor diet, maybe a vitamin deficiency. I went to a doctor, then another. Blood work, scans, referrals, nothing. Every test came back normal. I tried cutting caffeine, tried supplements, yoga, herbal remedies. Nothing touched the fog that seemed to cling to me. I'd wake up more tired than when I went to bed, limbs trembling like I'd just run a marathon. Even standing in the shower felt like too much some mornings. Then came the night that shattered everything. I woke up drenched in sweat, the sheets sticking to my back. My chest was pounding so hard I thought I might be having a heart attack. My arms felt numb, my skin slick and freezing. I struggled upright, every muscle in rebellion, the room spinning slightly as I forced myself to stand. Through the half-open bedroom door, I could see the bluish flicker of the TV from the living room. Sarah often stayed up late watching old dramas, but this time, something about her presence felt different. Off. She was just sitting there, unmoving, watching the screen, but not reacting to it. Too still. "Sarah," I called, barely more than a whisper. My throat was dry, hoarse from dehydration. "Can you help me?" She turned slowly. Her face looked washed out in the TV's light, the shadows sharpening her features. And for a moment, her expression froze, like a child caught doing something they weren't supposed to. Her eyes widened just for a second before she schooled her face back into that soft, composed smile I'd grown used to. "You okay?" she asked, her voice calm but laced with something unfamiliar. Tightness, hesitation, a flicker of something beneath the surface. I don't feel right," I muttered, pressing a hand to my chest. "I feel wrong, sick." She stood up, her movements deliberate, too deliberate. "Okay, don't panic," she said, voice soothing again. "I'll call an ambulance, just sit down. You're probably dehydrated or exhausted or both." But something in the way she reached for her phone gave me pause. It was too slow, too theatrical, like she was performing calm rather than actually feeling it. Her eyes didn't match her voice. My skin prickled with an instinct I hadn't felt in years, deep animal-level fear. I watched her carefully. Every part of me screamed that something wasn't right. It wasn't just my body failing me. It felt like I was being drained, attacked from within. And standing there, watching Sarah flip through her contacts with that too gentle smile, I realized, whatever was happening to me, she wasn't surprised. She already knew. The days crawled by, each one heavier than the last. I felt like I was disintegrating from the inside out, too weak to walk more than a few steps without needing to sit, too drained to sleep even when my body begged for rest. But the worst part wasn't the fatigue. It was the unshakable dread that clung to everything, every room, every breath. I didn't feel safe anymore, especially not around Sarah. Her ever-present smile, once comforting, now felt like a mask stretched too tight. Her voice, so soft and nurturing, made my skin crawl. There was something behind her eyes I hadn't seen before. Or maybe I just hadn't wanted to see it. The breaking point came one quiet evening when the air felt too still and I was too weak to stand up straight. I was heading to the bathroom, shuffling slowly past Sarah's door, when I heard her voice. It stopped me cold. She was on the phone. Her door was cracked open, and though I knew I shouldn't, I leaned in closer. "I don't know how much longer I can keep this up," she whispered. Her voice was low, urgent, a version of her I hadn't heard before. "She's getting weaker. I think it's almost time." My stomach turned. She wasn't talking like a nurse reporting a patient's condition. She wasn't worried. She was anticipating something, calculating. I didn't wait to hear more. My mind was spiraling. Almost time for what? What the hell did that mean? And how did she sound so calm about it? The next morning, I couldn't pretend anymore. I waited until she was sitting at the table with her coffee, like it was any other morning. Her eyes flicked up when I entered the room. "Morning," she said lightly, offering her usual gentle smile. But there was something behind it now. Tightness at the corners of her mouth, like she was bracing for something. I sat down across from her, heart thudding. "Who were you talking to last night?" I asked quietly, trying to keep my voice level. "What did you mean when you said, 'It's almost time'?" For the first time since I'd met her, she didn't have a ready answer. She froze, mid-sip, and slowly lowered her mug. Her face drained of color. There it was, the crack in the mask. She sat back and let out a long breath. "Listen, Natalie," she began, and her voice was trembling now. "I never wanted you to find out this way." I stared at her, my body tense, every instinct screaming that something was terribly wrong. She started, but then the words poured out in a rush. "You've been sick for months. You thought it was stress, burnout, but it wasn't. It was me. I've been poisoning you." The world stopped. I blinked at her, the words not making sense at first. "What?" I whispered, barely able to push the sound out. "I never meant for it to go this far," she said quickly, eyes filling with tears. I had to. You were always stronger than me. You always had everything. And then there was Jake." My breath caught in my throat. "You weren't supposed to survive this long," she said, quieter now. "I needed him. He's been mine for a long time, Natalie. You just didn't know it." I felt like the floor had opened up beneath me. My chest tightened. Jake, my son, my only child. She had been trying to take him from me. I remembered the way Jake had brushed off my symptoms, told me it was probably just stress. He'd laughed when I told him Sarah had been making all my meals, organizing my pills. Of course, he hadn't suspected anything, none of us had. My hands were shaking, too weak to grab my phone right away. But I knew what I had to do. I called the police, though the world felt like it was tilting, like I was trapped in someone else's nightmare. My voice sounded distant, unfamiliar. The words fumbled out of me. Detective Harper arrived less than an hour later. They found Sarah pacing in the kitchen, hands trembling, muttering to herself. When they placed her in handcuffs, she didn't go quietly. She fought, screamed, pleaded. She said she loved Jake, that she had only done what she had to. I watched from the window as they led her away, the red and blue lights casting fractured patterns across the walls of our once peaceful home. But there was no comfort in her arrest, just a hollow, echoing dread. The woman I had trusted, confided in, shared my life with, had been killing me slowly, and she would have succeeded. If I hadn't overheard that conversation, if I hadn't asked questions, Jake might have been left alone with her. I still couldn't process it fully. That night, Jake and I sat together in the living room for hours. He kept shaking his head, whispering, "I didn't know, Mom. I swear I didn't know." And I believed him. But the weight of what almost happened would hang over us forever. The house felt darker now, cold. Every corner of it carried traces of something rotten. I realized then that real monsters don't always come with claws or knives. Sometimes they come with gentle voices, warm smiles, and hands that claim to heal while they quietly destroy. And I had almost let one raise my son. I never thought moving in with a stranger would feel like a step forward. But after 6 months of couch surfing, sleeping on floors, and living out of a duffel bag that smelled like stale laundry and old fries, I would have taken just about anything with a door that locked and a ceiling that didn't leak. So when I found a 2-bedroom in Ashgrove, cheap, decent, with a solid roof, I didn't hesitate. It was the 3rd floor of an old brick walk-up, the kind with weather-beaten shutters and creaky wooden stairs. Not glamorous, but quiet, stable. And it came with a roommate, Natalie. I found her through a local rental forum. Her ad was short and clinical. Quiet, clean female roommate wanted. Must be employed. No drama. That was it. No emojis, no fluff. I sent a message with a quick bio, attached a picture so she'd know I wasn't a total gremlin, and within the hour, she replied. We met the next day at a little cafe near the bus depot. Natalie was soft-spoken, polite, and had this gentle, almost distant energy about her. She wasn't cold, just reserved, like someone who'd been burned before and wasn't keen on playing with fire again, which honestly suited me just fine. I wasn't looking for a new best friend. I just wanted someone who paid rent on time and didn't blast EDM at 2 a.m. A week later, I moved in. The apartment had charm, hardwood floors that protested with every step, a radiator that clanked like an angry ghost in the middle of the night, and ornate crown molding curling in the corners like old parchment. My room was near the front, street view, just big enough for a double bed, a thrifted dresser, and a lamp I duct-taped back together. Natalie's room was down the hall, door always closed. She mostly stayed in there. Said she was a freelance editor and worked odd hours. I rarely saw her leave the apartment. When we did cross paths in the kitchen or bathroom, she'd offer a vague smile and a soft, "Hey." Short, courteous conversations, nothing forced. I liked the distance. But something weird happened the first night I unpacked. After arranging my books and folding clothes into drawers that smelled faintly of cedar and dust, I took a hot shower to wash off the city grime. The bathroom was narrow but clean, white tile floors with a black border, an antique clawfoot tub with a wraparound curtain. I pulled it shut and stepped in, letting the heat ease the ache in my shoulders. About 10 minutes in, I felt it, that subtle shift in air pressure, like a door opened somewhere. A sudden cool draft kissed my shoulder. I turned uneasy. The shower curtain had pulled back slightly, just an inch, enough for the air to slip in. I stood frozen for a second, then told myself I must not have closed it all the way. No big deal. But the next morning, while making coffee, I noticed something off. Damp footprints. They led from the bathroom, across the hallway, straight toward Natalie's room. I crouched down, touching one. Still slightly wet. My size, maybe. But I hadn't gone back into the bathroom after my shower last night. "Natalie?" I called, peeking toward the living room. She looked up from the couch, a paperback in her lap, legs tucked under her. Yeah? Did you shower late last night? She shook her head casually. Nope. Why? I hesitated, then forced a little laugh. Hey, just saw some wet footprints, probably mine. I don't know. She gave a polite, unreadable smile and looked back down at her book. Still, weird little things kept happening. One morning, my toothbrush disappeared from the holder. I searched everywhere, thinking maybe it fell behind the sink. An hour later, I found it in my nightstand drawer. Damp. And when I brushed my teeth, it had this odd metallic aftertaste that made me gag, like copper pennies and old blood. Another night, I came home late from a shift at the diner. I dropped my bag, kicked off my shoes, and headed toward the bathroom, only to stop in the hallway. The shower was running. I frowned. Natalie's door was closed. I knocked softly on the bathroom door. Natalie? I waited. No response. Hey, you in there? Still nothing. I slowly pushed the door open. Steam billowed out, hot and thick. The room was empty. No towels disturbed. No shampoo bottles out of place. Then I saw it. My name. Jenna. Scrawled over and over in the fogged mirror. Different sizes. Messy. Almost frantic. Overlapping loops and lines until it looked like a child had been practicing cursive with shaking hands. My chest tightened. Natalie, I called louder now. Seriously? A voice behind me. What's wrong? I jumped, spinning to find her standing in the doorway, brows slightly raised. I pointed at the mirror, voice tight. Did you do that? She looked past me, expression calm. Do what? I turned back. The mirror was clean. Not a trace of fog. No names. Just my own reflection staring back at me, pale and shaken. No writing, no fog. Just our reflection staring back. Blank. Ordinary. But I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the apartment sent me bolt upright, heart pounding like a drum in my throat. I started locking my bedroom door at night. I told myself it was just caution, but deep down I was scared. A few nights later, I woke to a sound, soft whispering, muffled and close. I sat up in the dark, straining to hear. It wasn't the building settling. It was a voice, faint, repeating something in a rhythm, like a prayer. I crept into the hallway barefoot, every floorboard groaning under me. My palms were sweating. The bathroom door stood slightly ajar, pale light leaking into the hall. I inched closer, the whispering growing clearer. Natalie was inside, standing at the sink. Her hands moved in slow, deliberate circles over the surface of the mirror, as if wiping away fog that wasn't there. Natalie, I whispered. She didn't turn. Her fingers never stopped moving. She doesn't know, she murmured. I took a shaky step back. What? Suddenly she turned. Her head snapped toward me like a puppet on a string. Her smile was wide, too wide, and her eyes had this glassy sheen, like she wasn't really there. You're up late, she said softly. I couldn't sleep, I stammered, my voice catching in my throat. You should rest. Her tone was light, like she was offering advice to a child. Big day tomorrow. I backed away slowly, not looking away from her face until I was inside my room. I locked the door and shoved a chair under the handle. I didn't sleep. The next day, when I heard the front door close and her footsteps fade down the stairs, I made a decision. I waited 10 full minutes, then went to her room. It felt wrong, violating, but something wasn't right, and I needed answers. Her room was empty. Not clean, empty. No posters, no framed photos, no signs of personality. Just a bed with military straight sheets, a nightstand, and a desk that looked untouched. But one wall caught my eye. 5 mirrors, hung evenly side by side, each angled slightly inward, all facing the center of the room. It felt like walking into an interrogation setup. My heart pounded. I opened the closet. Inside, stacked neatly, was a plastic storage tub labeled bathroom in blocky Sharpie. I pulled off the lid. My missing things, my hairbrush, my face wash, a pair of earrings I thought I'd lost at work, even socks. All of them, taken, stored, collected. Beneath the pile was a notebook. I opened it. Page after page after page. My name. Emma. Written over and over like lines of punishment. Mixed in were sketches of my face, except warped, twisted, some with long scratches through the eyes, others with exaggerated smiles that made my stomach turn. I was still staring when I heard a floorboard creak behind me. Looking for something? I turned sharply. Natalie stood in the doorway. Her voice was flat, her expression unreadable. My throat dried up. "Why do you have my things?" She shrugged lightly. "I borrowed them." "You can't do that." I tried to keep my voice calm, steady. Her head tilted slightly like a curious bird. "We share. We're close, remember?" "No," I said firmly, backing up a step. "This isn't sharing. It's obsessive. I think I need to move out." Her smile twitched, slipped. "You can't leave," she whispered. "Not when we're finally sinking." "What?" I shoved past her and sprinted to my room, yanked my phone from the charger. No signal, no Wi-Fi, nothing. "Natalie, I'm calling the cops," I shouted, already moving to the front door, but the deadbolt wouldn't budge, jammed, frozen. She was behind me again. I could feel her breath, close. "You'll see," she whispered. "We're meant to be one." I ran, bathroom. Maybe I could open the window, scream for help. But then I saw it. Something behind the mirror. A blinking red light. I leaned in. Not a mirror. Two-way glass. Embedded behind it, nearly invisible, was a tiny camera. My stomach twisted. On the counter was her tablet. I tapped the screen. The feed loaded. Me, sleeping, dressing, showering. My knees went weak. "What the hell is this?" I gasped. Natalie stepped into the doorway, her hair, blonde now. My shade. She was wearing my favorite hoodie, the one I thought I'd left at the laundromat. "I've been documenting our harmony," she said softly. "Your life is so beautiful, Emma. I want it too." I grabbed the tablet and slammed it against the counter. The screen cracked, but the audio kept playing. Her voice, whispering my name, mimicking my laugh. My smile. I ran to the kitchen, yanked open a drawer, grabbed the biggest knife I could find. "Stay back." She stepped forward, slow, unblinking. "You can't hurt me," she said, her voice almost reverent. "We're the same now." Sirens. I heard them faintly, far off, but growing louder. A neighbor must have heard us. Natalie lunged. We struggled. The knife clattered to the floor. Her nails raked my arm. I shoved her off. The front door exploded inward. "Drop the weapon!" a cop shouted. I raised my hands, shaking, sobbing. "Help me! She's been spying on me!" Natalie dropped to her knees, tears streaming. "She attacked me," she cried. "I don't know why, she just snapped." I was stunned. She sounded so convincing, so sane. "She's lying," I pleaded. "Ask her about the mirror, the camera, the footage." At first they hesitated, but I made them call my mother. She confirmed everything. My name, my history, that I'd never even been to Switzerland, where Natalie claimed we'd met years ago. They searched the mirror, found the camera, found my stuff, found the notebook. Natalie, if that was her real name, was arrested that night. I moved out the same week. But I still wonder, did she find someone new? Another life to slip into? Another Emma to become? And whenever I hear a floorboard creak in the dark, I still check the mirror, just in case someone's watching. I was barely 18 when I made what I now know was the dumbest decision of my life. Back then, I thought I had it all figured out. My name's Josh, and at the time, I was just some cocky, stubborn kid from Fort Wayne, Indiana. convinced that moving out of my parents' house would magically fix everything. The truth? I was the problem. I couldn't see it then, of course. Me and my parents had been clashing for years. Every little thing sparked a fight. Whether it was me staying out late, sneaking weed behind the garage, or blowing off my community college classes. Especially between me and my dad. It felt like we couldn't even be in the same room without arguing. Back then, I blamed them for everything. But now, looking back, I can admit I was just a hot-headed idiot desperate to pin my mess on someone else. Most of my friends were still living at home, working part-time jobs, saving up for school or cars or whatever. I was the only one in a rush to break out like the house was on fire or something. My parents would catch me with beer or weed and threaten to throw me out. But the second I actually left, they'd call the cops and report me as a runaway. It became this stupid cycle. I'd pack up in a rage, storm out, and end up spending the night at the police station, getting the same old lecture. I never learned the lesson, not the one they wanted me to anyway. So when I turned 18, finally a legal adult, finally free to make my own bad choices, I was done. Done with their rules, their lectures, their guilt trips. I didn't have much money saved, but I didn't care. I just wanted out. None of my friends were ready to move out, and I couldn't find anyone to split a place. So, I went rogue. Turned to Craigslist. Yeah, I know. Probably the sketchiest decision possible, but I was desperate. I found this listing for a tiny one-bedroom on the south side of the city. Not a great neighborhood, but for $475 a month, I didn't care. I figured it was someone's converted basement, or an old lady renting out her spare guest house. I was willing to deal with quirks if it meant freedom. The poster's name was Cynthia. She didn't pick up when I called, but texted me back, said she was free that evening if I wanted to come check it out. I should have trusted my gut the second I saw the house. It was this low, squat little ranch-style place hidden behind a row of overgrown trees. The paint was peeling off the siding in long, curling strips. The porch light flickered like it had been dying for years. Still, I told myself, don't judge a book by its cover. Cynthia answered the door with a big, uncomfortable smile. She looked like she was in her mid-60s, with greasy gray hair pulled back into a tight bun and deep lines etched into her face that didn't go away when she smiled. She spoke quickly, like she'd memorized a script. "It's all yours, sweetheart," she said. "Just need first month and a small deposit. You can move in tomorrow." She barely let me look around. I asked if there was a lease or any paperwork. She waved it off. "We're keeping it simple. Cash is king, honey." Every ounce of common sense in me screamed to walk away. But I didn't. That cocky voice in my head, the one that said I was grown, that I could handle anything, overruled everything. So I paid her. The next evening, around 8 p.m., I pulled up after grabbing the last of my stuff from my parents' place. Cynthia's old blue car was still in the driveway. That gave me pause, but I figured maybe she just hadn't left yet. I walked in and stopped cold. She was sitting in the living room, my living room now, watching some ancient black and white TV show on a grainy little box set. What are you doing here?" I asked, trying to keep my tone even. She didn't even glance at me. "I'm staying here a few days until I get things sorted," she muttered. "That wasn't the deal," I said, heart starting to race. "You didn't say anything about roommates." She finally turned to me, smiling like I was the one acting nuts. "It's only temporary, honey. Don't be difficult." Part of me wanted to blow up, but another part, the part that was drained, overwhelmed, and still high on the thrill of finally being on my own, told me to let it go. She's just an old lady, I thought. What's the worst that could happen? Still, I locked my bedroom door that night, just in case. I should have trusted my gut. Around midnight, I woke up to this old-timey music playing from the living room, some war-era song I didn't recognize. Groggy, I threw on a hoodie and cracked my door open. "Hey, could you turn that down? I'm trying to sleep," I said. Cynthia was sitting there, staring blankly at the static-filled screen. She didn't even blink until I said it again. She finally turned it down a little, still silent. I went back to bed, trying to convince myself she was just lonely. Maybe a little off, but harmless. But at 2 a.m. I woke up again, this time to knocking. At first it was soft, barely audible over the faint music still playing outside. I sat up, annoyed. "What?" I called out. No answer. Then, in this soft sing-song voice, I heard her. "Danny, honey, dinner's almost ready. Come eat, sweetheart." I froze. My name's not Danny. Not even close. I didn't say a word, just held my breath, hoping she'd leave. Instead, the knocking grew louder. Violent. Fists pounding against the door, shaking it in its frame. "Open this door, Danny. Open it now before I come in there and show you what happens to naughty boys." I shoved the dresser against the door so fast I nearly crushed my own foot. My heart was pounding, an erratic, sickening rhythm in my chest. I could hear her breathing just on the other side. Harsh, ragged, like she'd been sprinting. My stomach turned. I grabbed my phone, fumbled it, and dropped it on the floor. Screw it. I flung open the window. The cold Indiana air slapped me in the face, instantly numbing my bare feet. I didn't care. I threw one leg out, then the other, and jumped barefoot into the freezing night. Gravel tore into my soles as I landed hard in the dirt. I didn't stop to look back. I just ran, gasping, wild-eyed, straight for my truck parked by the curb. I peeled out of that driveway so fast I nearly clipped the mailbox. I didn't even glance at the rearview mirror. I didn't want to see her. Didn't want to know if she was chasing me. That night, I slept in my car in a Walmart parking lot, curled up in the back seat, shaking like a leaf. I barely slept. Every noise outside made me jolt awake. Every time I blinked, I saw her face behind my eyelids. 2 weeks later, I found out the truth from my buddy's older brother, Todd, who worked in the county records office. I told him the woman's name was Cynthia, and he just frowned. "There's no Cynthia owning property on that block," he said, "but there is an Eileen Parker." Turns out Cynthia didn't exist. Her real name was Eileen Parker. She'd been using fake names to rent out her house for years. But what really made my blood run cold was what Todd told me next. Her son, Daniel Parker, had gone missing 2 years earlier. Police found his body buried in the backyard of that same house, poisoned, quietly killed and left in the dirt behind the porch. She was arrested a week after I ran, spotted downtown, wandering barefoot in a bathrobe, screaming at random men, screaming the name Danny. They said she was mentally unstable, delusional, maybe early dementia. That's what the police told the press. But I don't buy it. She wasn't confused. She knew what she was doing. And I'm convinced if I had stayed even one more night, I'd be in that backyard next to her son. Even now, 5 years later, I freeze up when I hear old-timey music on the radio. My throat closes, my hands go clammy. Sometimes I wonder, was I just a stand-in for Danny? Or was she trying to relive it, play the whole thing out again? I'll never know. I don't want to know. I remember gripping my car keys, hands trembling, backing away from the door while she whispered through it. "Don't be a bad son, Danny. Don't make Mama angry. You know what happens when you make me angry, right?" Her voice cracked mid-sentence, shifting from this sing-song sweetness to a deep, guttural snarl. I thought my heart was going to explode. My breath caught in my throat. I moved to the window, slid it open slowly, inch by inch. The old frame groaned loud enough to make me wince. I paused, listening. Silence. Then, bang. A loud slam against the door. "I said open the door, Danny." That was it. I climbed out of the window as fast as I could. My foot slipped, and I hit the gravel hard, scraping my hands and knees, didn't even feel it. I pushed myself up and ran like hell. My truck was parked a little further down the street, something I'd cursed earlier when I first moved in. Now it saved my life. I reached it, fumbling with my keys, hands too slick with sweat to get a grip. Finally, the door unlocked. I threw myself in, slammed the lock down, and started the engine. Tires screeched as I tore out of the neighborhood, heart hammering, adrenaline still spiking like a knife in my chest. I drove to the nearest 24-hour gas station and parked under the harsh, buzzing fluorescent lights. I just sat there, for almost an hour, staring at the dashboard, trying to convince myself I was safe, that it was over. But my mind wouldn't cooperate. My body was in that parking lot, but my head was still in that room, still hearing her voice through the door, still seeing that flickering porch light. I eventually called the police. When they got to the house, she was gone. The place was empty. No sign of her, like she had vanished into thin air. I told them everything. The name, the money I paid, how she stayed after I moved in. But there was no lease, no paperwork, no proof I'd ever been there. They looked at me like I was just another dumb kid who got scammed. "Stay away from the property," one officer told me. "If you see her again, call us." That was it. For weeks after, I lived in my car. I was too ashamed to go back to my parents, too paranoid to trust another stranger. Every face seemed suspicious, every smile too wide. I double-checked locks obsessively, slept with a pocket knife in my hand. Months later, a guy I met at the gas station recognized her photo. He told me she'd been arrested in another state. Real name, Margaret Price. She'd been caught squatting in an abandoned house. And yeah, there was another body. The remains of her son, Daniel Price, buried in the crawl space. So no, she wasn't confused. She wasn't just old and lonely. She knew what she was doing. She was trying to make me take her dead son's place. A detective I contacted later told me something that still makes my skin crawl. "People like her don't stop after one," he said. "They just find new sons." I still have nightmares. Sometimes I wake up in a cold sweat, convinced I hear her voice outside my door. I check the locks 3 times every night. I still look under my bed. I still close my closet door all the way. Even knowing she's in prison now, I don't think I'll ever feel fully safe again. That night didn't end with blood or screaming. No horror movie climax. Just a kind of fear that crawled under my skin and stayed. A terror that sank in so deep I can't scrub it out. And sometimes, God help me, I still hear her in my dreams. "Danny, dinner's almost ready. You don't want to upset Mama." I never went back to that side of town. Never touched Craigslist again. I made up with my parents eventually, but the fear stuck. Therapy helped a little, but some things just take root and never let go. If I learned anything, it's this. Never trust a stranger offering you a home that seems too good to be true, because sometimes it is.